Constantinople, a city cradled by continents, whispered in ancient history and bathed in the glow of empires. Romans, Latins, Arabs, Ottomans all dreamt of conquering this jewel carved from stone and water. But none captured the imagination like the Ottomans, whose conquest in 1453 became a legend, a prophecy fulfilled. We peel back the layers of myth and delve into the reality of the conquest. Was it simply a battle for land and power, or something more? Join us on a Tarikology exclusive as we unlock the secrets of the siege, brick by formidable brick. For centuries, empires coveted Constantinople. Its location, its wealth, its symbolic significance, it was a prize beyond compare. But its defenses, the Theodosian Walls, were legendary, considered impregnable. The towering Theodosian Walls, a marvel of engineering, had withstood countless assaults. Yet a new Ottoman Sultan, Muhammad al-Fatih, the conqueror, had a vision. He wouldn't be deterred. The Rumeli Hisar, a seemingly impossible feat of engineering, choked the trade routes and tightened the noose around Constantinople. Fear gripped the city. For 53 grueling days, the Ottomans bombarded the walls, day and night. Hunger gnawed, hope dwindled, but the defenders held firm. The prophecy, the legend, fueled their desperation. Finally, on May 29, 1453, the walls fell. The city that had defied empires succumbed. But this was no mere conquest. It was a turning point in history, marking the rise of the Ottomans as a global power. As we stand on the precipice of today, Constantinople, now Istanbul, whispers its stories. And while the myths surrounding the conquest may endure, understanding the truth remains crucial. For in the ashes of empires, we glimpse the enduring power of history, reminding us that the past, however distant, shapes the present and illuminates the path ahead.
Constantinople, a land of dreams, a land of ambition, and a land of conquest. In 1453, Sultan Mehmed II, or Muhammad al-Fatih, launched an epic war against Constantinople and against Constantine and the Byzantine Empire. In 1453, Sultan Muhammad al-Fatih managed to do the unthinkable. He managed to overcome these specific walls. He beat what 23 armies couldn't do. Join us in this documentary where we uncover the secrets, the mission that the Sultan had to go through, and in essence, the betrayals and everything else that led towards the conquest and opening of Constantinople. Join us and find out more.
It is said that the famous French Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte said if the earth was one state, then Constantinople would be its capital. While this may have not been his exact words, nearly 1500 years before the Napoleonic Wars, the emperor of the greatest empire of his time certainly thought he could be. When Constantine I decided to move the capital of the great Roman Empire away from its namesake, the city of Rome, his only choice would be the old ruins of a city called Byzantium, which he would turn into one of the greatest Christian cities in the world. And then over 1,000 years later, Muhammad al-Fatih would turn it into one of the most monumental Islamic cities in the world. Built in the 7th century BCE, the ancient city of Byzantium proved to be a valuable city for both the Greeks and the Romans because it lay on the European side of the Strait of Bosphorus. Constantine understood its strategic importance and upon reuniting the empire in 324, built his new capital there, naming it Constantinople. The story of Constantinople, though, begins much earlier. The Emperor Diocletian, who ruled the Roman Empire from 284 to 305, believed that the empire was just too big for one person to rule it and divided it into two in both the east and the west. A young Constantine then rose to power in the west when his father died, the ambitious ruler defeating his rival Maxentius for power at the Battle of Milvian Bridge and becoming the sole emperor of the west in 312 CE. He would then unite the empire again, reversing the decision of Diocletian a year later. Constantine was unsure though whether to locate his new capital in Old Rome, because it was never really considered, as he understood that the infrastructure of the city was declining, its economy was stagnant, and the only source of income was becoming scarce. Constantine then decided it was best to locate his new city at the site of Old Byzantium, claiming it to be the new Rome or Nova Roma. The city had several advantages. It was closer to the geographic center of the empire. Since it was surrounded almost entirely by water, it could be easily defended. The location provided an excellent harbor thanks to the Golden Horn, as well as easy access to the Euphrates frontier. Unlike once pagan Rome, Constantinople had been Christian from its very beginning. Religion took on a new meaning in the empire. Although Constantine openly supported Christianity, historians doubt whether or not he actually truly converted, waiting possibly until his deathbed to convert. Therefore, New Rome would boast temples to pagan deities and several Christian churches. Aya Sophia was one of the first commissioned by Constantine himself. By the close of the 4th century, it had become the Christian capital of a Christian empire. Spread across 7 hills like Rome, it was imperial by design, where statues of Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar, Augustus, Diocletian, and Constantine himself presiding around the city. This was a city of imperial palaces, a stock market, law courts, and even a large library. It occupied a vast, slightly compressed triangle of land, 2 sides of which were bordered from sea and the third by massive defensive walls. To the north lay the waters of the Golden Horn, and further east the Bosphorus Strait leading to the Black Sea, while down south led to the Sea of Marmara, which lay the path to the great Mediterranean. A city of this might would draw the attentions of other empires and rulers, even Christians themselves. With later emperors like Justinian facing large revolts within his own people, the city of Constantinople went through many struggles to defend itself. It had seen off a long line of would-be conquerors before Muhammad al-Fatih. Examples included Attila the Hun in 447, the Avars in 626, the Umayyads twice between 674 and 718, the Russians in 860, and the Ottomans themselves in 1422. Its only defeat before 1453 would be in 1204 by its own Christian contemporaries when the Latin Crusaders ransacked the city, to which the city never really recovered from.
Assalamu alaikum, Amino here. We're at the Rumeli Hisari fortress, the fortress which the Sultan Muhammad al-Fatih built as part of his plan to conquer Constantinople. Follow me and let's check it out. Obviously you can see, so this is like the entrance to the fortress. You can see the architecture, you can see, obviously this was built in the year 1452, so over 600 years ago. Now we're going to walk in. Unfortunately, most of the fortress is being restored, so we're not going to have access to the full fortress. But if you just pan through, you can see the walls. So you can see, obviously, this is one of the outer towers. You've got, if you look, if you pan to the walls themselves, so you can see that they've built the walls in the structure, which mimics other fortresses. If you pan into the corner down there, you can see the size. Those are the size of the cannonballs. Now, those cannonballs, and we'll obviously add that footage on, but that's the size of the cannonball that they used to shoot. Obviously back then. So these are just some cannonballs that they've just put down for representation purposes. So let's go inside. Okay, so we are inside the Rumeli Hisari fortress, which is a fortress built by Sultan Mehmed II in 1451 in order to conquer Constantinople. Now, Mehmed II is also referred to in Arabic as Sultan Muhammad al-Fatih. He's called al-Fatih because of the fact that al-Fatih refers to the opener, and he was the one that opened Istanbul, which is now, or he opened Constantinople, which is now called Istanbul, to the Muslims. Now, on my right hand side, we've got the Jandari Halil Tower, and this was named after the Grand Vizier, Jandari Halil Pasha. Now, who was he? He was in short, he was the Grand Vizier of Sultan Muhammad al-Fatih, and he essentially acted as the right hand of the Ottoman Sultan, and he was the second most powerful member of the Ottoman government. Now, he opposed the conquering of Constantinople because of the fact that he liked conducting business with the Romans, and he had constant disagreements with the Sultan on a variety of times throughout the conquest. And for this reason, after the conquest of Constantinople, he was essentially labeled for treason, and he was essentially, as it mentions here, he was taking bribes from the enemy, and on May the 30th, 1453, he was essentially executed. But this tower was essentially named after him because of the fact that he did play a pivotal moment. He played a pivotal role in the conquest in of itself.
The Rumeli fortress was an undoubtable signal from the Ottoman Sultan to the Romans that there was no going back. The declaration of war had been made. There was nothing stopping Mehmed from initiating the plans for an all-out siege of Constantinople. No diplomacy, no allowances, no more treaties. The construction of the fortress that was nicknamed the Throat Cutter in 1451 left nobody in doubt that Mehmed II was preparing to lay siege to Constantinople, even if his stated purpose was to control the entry and exit of shipping to and from the Black Sea. Built in less than 5 months by a workforce of 6,000, and from the vantage point of the top of the Aya Sophia, the Romans could only look on as the fortress was built, powerless and afraid of what was to come. The Throat Cutter was garrisoned with 400 men under its commander Firuz Bey, who was ordered to detain all ships passing up and down the straits on payment of a toll. To add force to this menace, a number of cannons had been constructed and hauled to the site. The guns, which were angled in different directions to command a wide field of fire, were capable of sending huge stone balls weighing 600 pounds whistling low across the surface of the water level with the hulls of passing ships. They were matched by other guns at the castle opposite, so that not even a bird could fly from the Mediterranean to the Black Sea. Henceforth, no ship could pass up or down to the Black Sea unexamined, either by day or night. On 25th November 1452, a Venetian ship from the Black Sea which tried to get through was sunk. Its captain and crew managed to get ashore, where they were captured.
Hello? Anyone home? Well, there's no one home. As you can tell, this is, as it says here, this is a cistern. Now, a cistern was thought to belong to the Byzantine period and was essentially transformed to the castle masjid during the time of Sultan Muhammad al-Fatih. And as it says here, the structure, which includes Khorasan mortar in its stone and brick masonry, was used as a water tank. So for those that don't understand what a cistern is essentially a water tank. And it was said that this was of Byzantine origin, but obviously after the Ottomans conquered it, they turned this into a water tank for the masjid, which is just up there. And we'll show you very shortly.
We are here at the Rumeli Fortress Mosque. The fortress itself was built in 1452 in a span of 4 months. Such an amazing and grand feat of engineering was built in such a small amount of time. Hundreds of stonemasons, blacksmiths and carpenters gathered here right on this spot to build this fortress. Imagine they worked tirelessly day in, day out, with no sleep and rest just to get the fortress built on time. It must have been quite a struggle.
The triangular structure with its 4 large and 13 small towers, its curtain walls 22 feet thick and 50 feet tall, its towers roofed with lead represented an astonishing building feat for the time. Mehmed's ability to coordinate and complete extraordinary projects at breakneck speed was continuing to dumbfound his opponents in the months ahead.
So this is the Fortress Mosque. Imagine the Ottomans at the time of the conquest of Constantinople praying here side by side. This is literally a commemoration of their faith and courage to fight a conquest in the name of Islam. So as the plaque said, the mosque was built by Mehmed II during the construction of the fortress. And it was damaged during the disaster in 1509. By 2014, the mosque, whose minaret had survived to the pedestal, was rebuilt by analogy with the faith period mosque and opened for worshippers in 2015. Follow us inside. Come in.
Okay, so we're now in the mosque within the Rumeli Hisari fortress, and as you can see, the masjid has been decorated very well. Of course, over time, from the conquest till now, the masjid has gone through a bunch of different environmental hazards. It's gone through earthquakes, it's gone through a bunch of other environmental factors, but they have restored the masjid, and they're currently restoring the Rumeli Hisari fortress as well. So if you just follow me, we've currently got some calligraphy up there, which just states, La ilaha illallah al-malikul haqqul mubin. We've got the minbar where the khatib would obviously give the speech. We have here essentially the mihrab, and this is essentially where the imam would stand for the prayer. And maybe, obviously, this is just speculation, but Sultan Muhammad al-Fatih himself might have actually stood here to lead the prayer, as he was the emir, he was the leader of the Ottomans. And finally, in this corner here, we've got another place where the khatib would sit and give either the khutbah or deliver a lecture. We've got more Arabic just up there. And then we've got hadith of the Prophet ﷺ in the corner there. And then if you just want to pan it through, we've got the mosque with some hadith in the back. There's some Quranic verses in the corner. We are currently on the edge of the fortress. As you can see, we're overlooking the Bosphorus Strait. Now, there's a boat that's just passing us from the Jandar Halil Tower, from the barracks and from the edges of the fortress. How easy would it be to send cannons from the fortress into the ship? That was the purpose of the Rumeli Hisari fortress. It was for the Ottomans to be able to attack any ship that passes in or any ship that would pass out. The Ottomans, they built this fortress, and if you just look across the sea onto the other side, you can't really see it on camera. If you want to check it out, feel free to Google it, the Anadolu fortress. That fortress and this fortress combined was enough to deter anyone from sending help. That's what essentially stopped the Byzantines from receiving reinforcements. The fortress here was so well designed that any ship that passed through or tried to pass through would immediately be met with cannon fire, and this essentially deterred other states from providing support. This was a very strategic location that the Sultan chose, and this was constructed in under 4 months. That just goes to show that this was a great feat of engineering to have built such an immaculate fortress in such a short period of time, in such a critical moment in history.
The fortress was built in a critical location, the narrowest point of the Bosphorus Strait. It was a choke point for any ships that were entering from the Mediterranean Sea or the Black Sea. Imagine ships trying to provide aid to the Byzantines, but as they arrive to this fortress, they are riddled and tormented by cannon fire from this fortress as well as the Andalo fortress. This led to the Byzantines being demoralized as well as weak, leading to the conquest of Constantinople in 1453. After the conquest of Constantinople, the fortress was then repurposed into a checkpoint where any ships that entered the Bosphorus Strait were then taxed by the Ottoman Empire. This led to it benefiting the Ottoman economy. The fortress was then repurposed into a prison, granting justice on those that went against the state. Today, the fortress stands as a museum, left as it was hundreds of years ago. Its fortified walls, cannons and cannonballs, evidence of its rich history.
The Bosphorus Sea, usually a vibrant artery of trade, lay heavy with anticipation in the spring of 1453. Beneath a bruised sky, the water churned, mirroring the turmoil within Constantinople's besieged walls. Ottoman galleys, like hungry hornets, patrolled its length, their crimson sails a stark contrast to the leaden clouds. The rhythmic thrum of their oars was a constant drumbeat against the city's nerves. On the shore, the once bustling Genoese trading post at Anadolu Kavagi now bristled with Ottoman cannons. Their muzzles, dark and hungry, pointed towards the Golden Horn, the Byzantine capital's lifeline. Smoke plumes rose from the smouldering remains of Therapia, a fortress on the Asian shore that had fallen to the Ottomans just days before. The once proud Byzantine watchtower stood silent, a grim sentinel to the city's precarious situation. Fishing boats, a staple on the Bosporus, had vanished. The only vessels daring to navigate these treacherous waters were the occasional desperate courier or a lone Byzantine warship, a defiant speck against the Ottoman armada. Schools of fish, usually teeming in the current, seemed to have fled, leaving the water an unsettling expanse of empty blue-green. The Bosporus, once a witness to the comings and goings of empires, now held its breath. It waited along with the besieged city for the inevitable clash that would reshape the course of history. The scent of salt and seaweed hung heavy in the air, laced with the faint tang of anticipation and the ever-present shadow of war.
A 16th century French scholar said, "The Bosphorus with one key opens and closes two worlds, two seas. What separates Europe from Asia, what made Constantinople a city on two continents, as the only passage between the Black Sea and the Mediterranean, the Bosphorus has always been of great commercial and strategic importance. Even before the Romans, the ancient Greeks and Persians understood its sheer importance in global trade and even in subduing its enemies. The strategic significance of the strait was one of the factors in the decision of the Roman Emperor Constantine to build his new capital there. The Bosphorus' importance lies in the fact that it is a significant shipping route that links the Black Sea with the world's oceans. It connects the Black Sea with the Marmara Sea and the Dardanelles Strait. This made whoever controls the Bosphorus in charge of one of the most lucrative trade routes in the world.
Dotted around the Marmara Sea are the Prince's Islands. These are islands that were used by the Ottoman Sultan as a place of abode as well as imprisonment. These islands signify the freedom of the Ottoman Empire as well as its incarceration. The Ottoman Sultan would place his family members as well as nobility there to prevent succession wars as well as keep a watchful eye over the enemies within. However, in return, he would grant all of their needs, wants and desires.
To the east, the riches of Central Asia could be funneled through the Bosphorus into the city: gold, furs, caviar, wax and salt, spices, amber and pearls from the Far Orient. To the south, routes led overland to the cities of the Middle East, Damascus, Aleppo and Baghdad. And to the west, the sea lanes through the Dardanelles open up the whole Mediterranean, the routes to Egypt and the Nile Delta, the rich islands of Sicily, the Italian peninsula, and everything that lay beyond the gates of Gibraltar. The currents of the Bosphorus also brought a rich seasonal harvest of fish. Therefore, the straits represented an area of vulnerability for the Ottomans. It was impossible to be the secure lord of two continents if crossing between them could not be guaranteed. At the same time, if he could find a way to dominate the Bosphorus, Mehmed could strangle the supply of grain and help to the city from the Greek colonies on the Black Sea and cut off the custom revenues it derived from it. With the creation of the Rumeli fortress in 1451, tolls were then introduced on all vessels sailing between the Black Sea and the Mediterranean, a direct challenge to Venetian and Genoese maritime trade. Mehmed had seized, therefore, complete control of all sea traffic on the Bosphorus, ensuring that no relief could easily come from either Greek settlements on the Black Sea or from the Mediterranean in the south. It was a lesson he had learnt from his father Murad's unsuccessful attempt to take the city in 1422, which failed to incorporate the naval element of the attack. Therefore, the opening up of Constantinople was not just a military endeavor to expand Darul Islam at the expense of the Romans, but to open up the Ottoman state into a world power. By taking control of the Bosphorus Strait, Mehmed would take the only strategic and lucrative geographical area the Romans had left. For with the taking of Constantinople, he would not just take a city, he could take the whole Mediterranean.
The Ottomans, led by the ambitious Sultan Mehmed II, were laying siege to Constantinople, the jewel of the Byzantine Empire. One major obstacle stood in their way: the Golden Horn, a natural harbour protected by a massive chain strung across its mouth. This seemingly impassable barrier prevented Ottoman ships from entering and attacking the city from the water. Legend tells us that Mehmed, a man of both intellect and ambition, dreamt of a fantastical solution. But his vision wasn't filled with mythical beasts or divine intervention. Instead, he envisioned a daring and audacious act of engineering. Imagine, if you will, a spectacle unlike any other dozens of Ottoman warships, not gliding on the water, but perched precariously on greased logs. With the combined might of men and oxen, these vessels would be dragged across the land, carving a path straight through the unforgiving terrain. This seemingly impossible feat would bypass the chain entirely, bringing the Ottoman fleet directly to the unfortified shores of the Golden Horn, striking terror into the hearts of the defenders. This wasn't just a dream. It was a strategic masterstroke that Mehmed would order into action, a move that would play a crucial role in the eventual fall of Constantinople.
A large Italian trading community had been established in the city. The Venetians and Genoese were accorded special privileges and benefited accordingly. The profiteering materialistic Italians were not popular though. The Genoese had their own colony at Galata, a walled town across the Golden Horn. The Venetian colony was considered so insolent in its wealth and prosperity as to hold the imperial power in scorn. Waves of xenophobia swept the populace. In 1171, Galata was attacked and destroyed by the Greeks. In 1183, the entire Italian community was massacred under the eye of the Roman general Andronicus the Terrible. The Genoese trading colony known as Galata, was reported to be thriving and prosperous, a large town inhabited by Greeks, Jews and the Genoese, according to the traveller accounts, who declared it to be the most handsome ports they had ever seen.
The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the worn stone floor of the Galata Tower's highest chamber. Dust motes danced in the golden light, momentarily illuminated before settling back into the watchful silence. Centuries had passed through these walls, whispering tales of empires both rising and falling. Yet the scene unfolding before the tower now held a tension unlike any it had witnessed before. A distant rumble, a tremor felt through the very foundation of the tower, heralded the relentless thud of Ottoman cannons. Plumes of smoke stained the sky above Constantinople, marring the vibrant tapestry that had once been the Byzantine capital. The once lively city now echoed with the panicked cries of its trapped inhabitants, a wave of fear washing over the city and reaching even the lofty heights of the Galata Tower. The Genoese of Galata stood on a precarious precipice. Neutrality had been their shield. But would it hold against the storm brewing at their doorstep? The Ottoman forces, like a relentless tide, threatened to engulf all before them. Uncertainty gnawed at the residents within the tower's walls. Would they remain a beacon of neutrality, or would the winds of war force them to choose a side? The fate of Constantinople, of the tower itself, hung in the balance. The tower stood as a silent observer, yet intricately woven into the unfolding drama. The Bosphorus churned, the sky wept, and the fate of an empire hung by a thread. The Galata Tower watched, waiting to bear witness to whatever stories the coming days might bring.
The foundations of the Galata Tower predate Constantinople itself. Archaeologists have found remnants and clues of settlements that were placed here in the past. Further along, in 1330 AD, Constantine I arrives. He sees potential in the area and he creates a fortress haven here with bathhouses, churches, accommodations, and theatres. Imagine a community vibrant and bustling here in the past. Fast forward in 527 AD, Justinian arrives and creates something called the Megalith Pygus, the Great Tower. Its function, a lighthouse to guide ships towards the shore safely. Later on, the Genosians arrive in 1348. They create the Tower of Christ. They use it as a watchtower. A person was to be placed at the top of the tower to keep a watchful eye over the Genosian colony. If any enemies tried to attack, they had ample time to defend, counter, and attack their enemies. The tower consists of 9 floors. There are still evidence of its Genoese and Ottoman heritage. The arched windows and the magnificent stonework represent its Genoese past, whilst the magnificent tower work and the pointed arches represent its Ottoman past. The tower is actually used as a tourist attraction where tourists can get a 360-degree view of the entire city. You can see massive landmarks like the Aya Sophia and Topkapi Palace. In 1453, the Ottomans arrive and conquered Constantinople. They see the tower and they find that it also has potential. But throughout the era of the empire, they change its function. Initially, it is changed to a fire tower. What they did was they would place a person at the top of the tower, and if anywhere in the city there was a fire, a battalion would be sent to extinguish it, saving lives and communities. At the time of Suleiman the Magnificent, they then changed the tower into a prison. It's being used to serve justice to those that go against the state. Finally, it is then changed into an observatory used to gaze at the stars.
Well, I don't know how we did it, but we're on the Theodosian Walls. The walls that the Romans themselves stood on when they were defending the city in 1453. Now, on my right-hand side, we have the upper part of the wall. as you can see, the wall is not that well preserved. It's derelict, there are holes. Unfortunately, this wall has not been preserved that well. But don't worry, we will take you and we will show you walls that are better preserved so that you can fully understand how the city was defended from 23 armies over 1,000 years of history. On my other side, you can see the Mihrima Sultan Mosque. Now this is behind the Idani Gate, as I mentioned earlier, and this mosque was commissioned by Suleiman the Magnificent in the 16th century. As you can see, it has a tall minaret, it has the great dome, and it has many small domes. This masjid, as we went inside, it looks amazing. And I would highly recommend, if you're in Istanbul, please check this masjid out. Now we will go and find you walls that are better preserved and walls with a lot more history to see. Behind me is the gate of St. Romanos. Now this gate was named after a church within the old city. Now on my right hand side, if you look up on the inscription, this is an inscription commemorating the entrance of the Ottoman army through this gate. Now the reason why it's currently called the Topkapi Gate or the Cannon Gate is because behind us, so if you pan behind us, you will see that there's a bunch of trees now, but back then that would have been where the famous cannon basilica was placed. Now, basilica was an invention of the Hungarian engineer Orban. Here, it was said that he had initially gone to Constantine and offered his services as a cannon maker to him, but unfortunately Constantine couldn't afford it. So Orban went with his son to Mehmed II and offered the same services, saying that I have cannons that can take down the walls. Mehmed happily agreed. So the cannons that Orban had made were placed right behind us. And essentially the cannons did so much damage that this part of the wall had essentially collapsed. And it was here where the Ottoman Janissaries had piled through and essentially broken through and entered the city. So if you follow me, we can just quickly look at the wall. So if you pan up, you can currently see the wall. Now the wall is in much better condition because the conquest had destroyed most of it. The Sultan Muhammad al-Fatih or Mehmed II had initially restored the wall. So if you follow me, as you can see that there are currently now stalls here. Back then, obviously it weren't a thing, but obviously these walls are no longer in use. Now they're more of a historical feature. You can just see the height of the walls. Look how high the walls are. They were restored by the Sultan after the war. To commemorate the entrance of the Ottomans into the city, they've placed 2 Ottoman statues here, and this just essentially commemorates the victory of the Sultan over the Byzantine Empire. Now we will move on to the next wall. A cool fact about the Golden Gate Wall is that the Byzantines, the royals, they used to enter through this wall. So royal processions, after a Byzantine emperor was successful in a war, they would actually enter through this wall. So if you just pan through the wall, you'll see obviously now the wall has different inscriptions, but back then the wall used to have inscriptions of emperors, statements, and so on and so forth. Okay, after a grueling march, we are now at the Golden Gate Wall. Now, when Emperor Theodosius built it initially, it was just over 8 miles from one end of the wall to the other end of the wall. Now, it's approximately 3.5 miles, and we have walked the distance just to show you the Golden Gate Wall. Now, the Golden Gate Wall is best known for being one of the better preserved walls. As we can see from the back, that you can see it has the initial tower, it's got the initial part of the outer wall. If we look to our side, you can see that it's got the moat. Now, the moat now is obviously filled with grass because it hasn't been maintained. In the time of the Romans, this would have been filled with water, and this is how the walls were. So it was filled with water. And then you can see from the moat, you have the outer wall. And then you can see as it gets higher, you can see the inner wall. Now, some information regarding the walls themselves. So there were 3 layers of walls spanning just over 8 miles of land. Each successive layer of the wall was taller. So as you can see, you have the outer part of the wall, then you've got the moat, then it gets higher, then you have what would have been like a pathway. Then you have the next wall, the inner wall, and then you've obviously got the entrance and whatever was inside the wall. The innermost layer of the wall was 16 feet thick and 36 feet tall, and this was made out of limestone bricks. There were 96 towers that covered the 3.5 miles of wall. The second set of walls were 26 feet tall with 90 towers. The ground floor consisted of a moat 60 feet across and 22 feet deep. So this, from the top to the bottom, is approximately 22 feet deep, and it is approximately 60 feet across. Whoever had to attack, and imagine this, whoever had to attack these walls would have had to go, because this would have been flat if you pan the camera to the side. So this would have been flat, no grass, it would have been flat land. You would have had the first wall, so which was this wall here. Then you would have had what we call the moat. This would have been filled with water. So you have one wall here, you have the moat. Then you've got the outer wall, which is, as I mentioned earlier, it's a lot higher. Then you've got what is also known as the killing field. And then you've got the innermost part of the wall, which is the tallest part. It's also the best defended part of the wall. Now, in 447 CE, the earthquakes damaged the wall and the sea walls. 57 towers had collapsed. And this was made worse by the fact that the Hunnic Empire, famously known for its attacks against the Byzantines, were on the board of attacking the Byzantine Empire. A very famous Hun, Attila the Hun, as most of you would know, he was a very famous Hun, and the Hunnic Empire were on the verge of attacking the Byzantines, and this obviously spiked the Romans to build the walls. The emperor immediately put together a force to build the walls after the earthquake in 447. The emperor made it a competition with two main associations known as the Greens and the Blues. They were essentially two sporting federations, and they were obviously, as you'd call them today, factions, the Greens and the Blues. The emperor decided to make the Greens and Blues compete on who could build their portion of the wall quicker, and this was effective. By doing this, the Greens ultimately tried to beat the Blues, and the Blues tried to beat the Greens, and this essentially meant that the walls were built in a record time frame after the earthquake. The walls then stood for approximately 1,000 years, and for this reason 23 armies had tried to conquer the city, but they were not able to, because they'd have to go through, as I mentioned earlier, 200 feet of walls from the ground, the moat, the outer wall, and then the inner wall. So in essence, they were starting and they were working their way upwards, and this was one of the things that made the walls impenetrable. On the side of the Golden Gate wall of the Theodosian Walls, there is a breakage. Now we've managed to come through it, and now you can actually see the inner, the moat, the outer wall, and the gap in between the inner and the outer wall. So if you just come closer, you can see we have the inner part of the wall, which, as I mentioned earlier, is the highest part of the wall. Obviously, this is somewhat derelict. The other side is better preserved, but in front of the inner side, you've got the gap. Now, this gap was called the killing field. Now, it's obviously filled with grass because it was not maintained, but this would have been just filled with traps. This was essentially where it was said that Giovanni Giustiniani, the Genoese who led the army of Constantine, fought. Now, in front of that, you have the outer wall, which is a bit lower. And in front of that, you have the moat. And in front of that, you had the lowest part of the wall. So essentially, you had 200 feet to climb to get inside the walls of the Theodosian Walls. Now let's continue on to the other side.
For 8 centuries, the Theodosian Walls had stood as an unyielding titan, a bulwark against the tide of invaders. Forged in the fires of Roman ingenuity, they had witnessed empires rise and crumble at their feet. Now, in the spring of 1453, they braced themselves for their greatest challenge yet. A tremor ran through the ancient stones as the Ottoman horde descended. Cannons, instruments of a new and terrible age, roared their defiance, spewing forth plumes of smoke that choked the sky. The once pristine white marble of the walls bled black with soot, each detonation a hammer blow against their ancient pride. But the walls too had a voice. Catapults, the weapons of a bygone era, hurled defiance back at the enemy lines. Showers of flaming arrows rained down upon the besiegers, turning night into a fiery inferno. The clash of steel echoed through the canyons between the towers, a symphony of death composed by 1,000 desperate defenders. Day and night, the siege raged. The Ottomans, relentless and driven by the fervor of conquest, battered the walls with a fury that seemed unstoppable. Yet the defenders, Byzantines and a smattering of foreign allies united in their final stand, held firm. Each breach was sealed with the blood of heroes, each fallen comrade replaced by another desperate soul clinging to the slimmest sliver of hope. The very air crackled with tension, a storm brewing between the city and its besiegers. The once proud banners of the Byzantines, emblazoned with the two-headed eagle, now hung heavy and tattered. But within the city walls, a flicker of defiance remained. For within those ancient stones dwelled the indomitable spirit of generations past, a spirit that refused to yield. The Theodosian Walls, though scarred and weary, stood tall. They were a testament to human resilience, a defiant roar against the tide of oblivion. Would they hold? Only time and the relentless tide of war would tell.
By the 14th century, Constantinople had been put under siege 23 times, and only once had been bowed to enemy forces. For the Romans, such was the aura of protection around the city. It could be said that the citizens saw the city of Constantinople protected spiritually with the Aya Sophia, and more importantly, physically protected by the great Theodosian Walls. By far, one of the most impressive man-made defenses were the colossal city walls raised during the reign of the boy Emperor Theodosius II. Running for 4 miles on the landward side that did not border the sea, this was an incredible fortification around the city that made it supposedly impregnable. First came a 20-meter wide moat, an inner wall with battlements, then an outer terrace where attackers who had managed to get across the water could easily be picked off from the wall. The terrace led to an outer wall, 9 meters high and topped with towers, and a battlement. Beyond this terrace lay the mighty inner wall up to 6 meters thick and 12 meters high, strengthened with 96 towers. They were completed by a wall defending the Marmara coastline, reinforced with 188 towers, and another protecting attack from the Golden Horn, which had a further 110 towers. Together, this complex system of moats, walls with towers, battlements and gates represented the ancient world's most formidable defenses and drew the scorn and failed efforts of his attackers for over 1,000 years. So important was the upkeep of the walls for the city, even had its own count of the wall, a senior official whose responsibility was to look after the state of the walls with obligatory assistance of every citizen. Such did the walls bring so much confidence to the West that despite the declining power of the Romans amidst the rise of the Ottoman state, they still believed that the Ottomans would never take Constantinople. The famous traveller and historian Pero Tafor offered an arrogant verdict, typical of the Europeans at this time, where he said in 1437, "I am of the opinion that if the Turks were to meet the armies of the West, they would not overcome them, not because they lacked in strength, but because they don't know the essentials of war." He would further praise the city's defenses, quoting previous attempts that would not succeed as the walls are of steel and will never fail. All in all, Mehmed had a mighty challenge in front of him. The depth and complexity of the system, the stoutness of its walls, and the height from which it commanded its field of fire rendered the Theodosian Walls virtually impregnable to an army equipped with the conventional resources of siege warfare in the Middle Ages. However, in 1452, a compelling opportunity came about when a Hungarian engineer called Orban made his way to the city for an audience with Mehmed. The mercenary had already tried to seek his fortune in Constantinople as the greater of large cannons, a key new major weapon of siege warfare. The cautious Romans, however, could not afford his services, so welcomed with open arms by the Ottoman Sultan, who pressed him closely to understand his capabilities. When asked whether he was capable of shattering the walls of Constantinople, he famously said, "I can shatter to dust not only these walls with the stones of my gun, but the very walls of Babylon itself." For when Mehmed heard these words, he realized his dream could finally come true. Cannons were not new. Even his father had used them in his attempt to take the city, but this one was like no other. he ordered the building of this new cannon, ordering it to be ready to be test fired by January 1453 near his palace. With barrel length of 9 meters and an ability to fire cannonballs weighing more than half a ton, it was the world's first supergun. Nothing like this had been ever seen before. The fuse was lit, and as the cannon was fired, an almighty explosion shook the earth and sent up a vast cloud of smoke, and the cannonball flew over a mile before smashing 6 feet into the ground and said to have been heard 10 miles away. As the Sultan watched with resounding triumph, news of these weapons would reach the Romans, with the Roman ministers calling it a terrible, unprecedented monster, and a power so invincible that no one would believe it unless they saw it with their own eyes. Underneath it all, it was quickly clear that in the new age of warfare, the Theodosian Walls were structurally inadequate. It was in those moments the Sultan realized, as it was the boy Emperor Theodosius II that would build these walls, it was the boy Sultan Mehmed II that would destroy them.
A tremor unlike any before shook the very foundations of the Theodosian Walls. The relentless barrage of Ottoman cannons had finally found its mark. A colossal chunk of masonry crumbled, spewing dust and despair into the air. A gaping wound, a monstrous maw, had been torn into the once impregnable barrier. A guttural roar, a primal surge of humanity erupted from the Ottoman ranks. They surged forward, a wave of green and crimson crashing against the city's last line of defense. The remaining defenders fought with the ferocity of cornered animals, their blades stained crimson in a desperate ballet of death. But the tide could not be held. The Ottomans, fueled by religious zeal and the promise of plunder, overwhelmed the weary defenders. Like a torrent through a broken dam, they flooded into the city. Amidst the cacophony of screams and clashing steel, Sultan Mehmed II, the conqueror, rode through the breach. His gaze, steely and cold, swept over the carnage. The stench of death hung heavy in the air, a macabre perfume to his victory. Constantinople, the jewel of the East, the last bastion of the Roman Empire, lay broken at his feet. His path led him past burning homes and through streets slick with blood. The once proud citizens, now defeated and terrified, cowered in the shadows. Sultan Mehmed rode on, his expression unreadable. Was it triumph? Was it awe at the devastation he had wrought? Only he knew. Finally, he reached his destination. The Aya Sophia, the crown jewel of the Byzantine Empire, a magnificent edifice that stood as a symbol of Christendom. Its golden dome, once gleaming in the sun, now bore the scars of battle. Yet it stood defiant, a testament to the enduring power of faith. Sultan Mehmed dismounted, a solitary figure silhouetted against the smoke-choked sky. He ascended the steps, each one a thud against the marble, the echo resonating through the city like a death knell. As he entered the grand hall, a hush fell over the Ottomans who followed. Sunlight streamed through the shattered stained glass windows, casting a kaleidoscope of colors onto the terrified faces within. Sultan Mehmed stood at the center of the once sacred space. His eyes, gleaming with a fanatic glint, surveyed the scene. He had come to conquer, and conquer he had. But in this moment, amidst the echoes of battle and the smell of blood, a new ambition flickered in his gaze. This was not just a conquest, it was a transformation. The Aya Sophia, a symbol of one faith, would be reborn as a symbol of another.
The Aya Sophia was the centerpiece of the city, reflecting both its imperial and Christian heritage. The Church of Holy Wisdom, as it was known, was completed by Roman Emperor Justinian in 537. 6th century Byzantine historian Procopius was so awed at the building that was created. He described it as soaring to a height to match the sky. As it surged from amongst the other buildings, it stands on high and looks upon the remainder of the city, adorning it so much that it glorifies it in its own beauty. It became the centerpiece of not only the city, but the Christian world. Its origins were steeped in a lot more trouble, however. The first Hagia Sophia was commissioned in 360 AD. The first Hagia Sophia featured a wooden roof, but the structure was burnt to the ground in 404 during the riots that occurred in Constantinople as a result of the political conflicts within the family of then Emperor Arcadius, who had a very difficult reign. Arcadius' successor, Emperor Theodosius II, rebuilt the Hagia Sophia, and the new structure was completed in 415. The second Hagia Sophia contained 5 naves and a monumental entrance, and was also covered by a wooden roof. However, a little more than 1 century later, this would again prove to be a fatal flaw for this important basilica of the Greek Orthodox faith, as the structure was burnt for a second time during the Nika revolts against Emperor Justinian I. After the suppression of the revolts, and to retain the support of the people by appealing to their religious zeal, he would take the chance to rebuild the church that would stand until 1453. It is even credited to bringing Russia into the Orthodox faith. When a delegation came from Kiev in the 10th century, they would describe it as heaven on earth, as a series of earthquakes would affect the integral structure of the church through the years, but remained as a building that was the setting for great historical events that you could only wish to be a fly on the wall during those events. The medieval period saw the Hagia Sophia take stage for one of the most significant events in Christian history, the Great East-West Schism of 1054, an event that would have a great impact on not only Christendom, but also to the rise of the Ottomans. On July 16, 1054, at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, as the Romans were preparing for their prayers, 3 churchmen dressed in full robes stepped into the church through one of the great west doors and walked purposefully towards the altar, watched by the gathering congregation. The men were cardinals of the rival Catholic Church, sent from Rome by the Pope to settle theological disputes with their brothers in the East. They had been in the city for some time, but this afternoon, after lengthy and awkward negotiations, they had lost patience and were coming to take decisive action. The leader of this delegation carried in his hands a document whose content was to prove explosive for Christian unity. Advancing into the sanctuary, he placed a bull of excommunication on the great altar, turned smartly on his heel, and walked right out. As the cardinal clopped back into the brilliant summer light, he shook the dust from his feet and proclaimed, "Let God look and judge." One of the church deacons ran into the street after him, waving the bull and beseeching him to take it back. The cardinal refused and walked straight off, leaving the document lying in the dust. 2 days later, the cardinals took a ship back to Rome. Violent religious rioting broke out in the streets that was only pacified by pronouncing a formal curse on the papal delegation. The offending document was publicly burnt. This incident was the start of a process known to history as the Great Schism, which was to inflict deep wounds on Christendom, with the split not even rescinded until 1965, while the scars still remain. However, in reality, the events of that day were only the culmination of a lengthy process of separation between the two forms of worship that had been gathering force for hundreds of years. It was based as much as anything on cultural, political, and economic differences. In the East, they worshipped in Greek; in the West, in Latin. They were different forms of worship, different approaches to church organization, and differing views on the role of the Pope. More generally, the Romans had come to regard their Western neighbors as barbarians. They probably had more in common with the Muslims on their frontier than the Franks across the sea. By the 15th century, the relentless pressure of the Ottoman state was forcing successive emperors to appeal to their Western Christian counterparts, whom they had many problems with. When the Emperor John VIII toured Italy and Hungary in the 1420s, the Catholic King of Hungary suggested that aid would be more readily available to him if the Orthodox united with the Church of Rome and swore loyalty to its Pope and its creed. By 1439, an attempt was made to ease the schism with the formation of the Council of Florence. It had finally achieved a long sought-after union of the two rival churches between the Pope Eugenius IV and John VIII. In practice, though, arguably it only succeeded in ensuring the division at the heart of the city, when unity against the far more greater threat of the Ottomans was most needed. As the agreement was favored by the emperor, his inner circle, senior officials, and the common people were very much against it. Such was the strength of feeling against it. The agreement was hastily withdrawn. There was no joyful celebration in the Hagia Sophia that night, only sulking. When John VIII died in 1448, his replacement, Constantine XI, anticipated the prospect that he could possibly be the last emperor of the Roman Empire. His empire was virtually bankrupt and so wrecked with religious division that he was not even able to be crowned in the auspicious Hagia Sophia. As the threat of war with Mehmed grew, Constantine addressed a series of increasingly desperate pleas to the Pope, hoping to bring the agreement to Florence over a decade before as a sign of desperation to save the city. The Pope decided to send a papal delegate to Constantinople to ensure that the union was celebrated in the Hagia Sophia. He took 200 archers with him to show the church's dedication and commitment to defend the city. The agreement was signed again for the union of the two churches in the Hagia Sophia, but popular feeling was so inflamed that there were further disorder in the streets. Monks, nuns, and lay people raged about, shouting, "We don't want Latin help or Latin union. Let us get rid of this worship of the unleavened." They would even shun the Hagia Sophia as a place of nothing better than a Jewish synagogue or a heathen temple. They worshipped only in the securely Orthodox churches of the city. Without a patriarch or a congregation, the great church fell dark and silent. In the famous words of Grand Duke Lucas Notaras, the second most powerful man in the city at the time, proclaiming that it is better to see the ruling over the city the turban of the Turks than the Latin hat. But what comes out of this story is that the Hagia Sophia was not simply a religious building, but the capital building of all political affairs of the Roman Empire. Treaties were signed, diplomats and leaders gathered, and the great imperial decisions were made. This was undoubtedly a government building, not an ordinary one, but the most important one akin to the modern day White House in America and Houses of Parliament in the UK.
We are now in the Aya Sophia, the building that was built approximately 360 and opened for worshippers in the following year. The Aya Sophia was originally built as the basilica. The basilica is what we would now call a government building, and the emperors would use this as their government building, as their castle, as their headquarters. And the Aya Sophia was also doubled as a church. It was a Greek Orthodox church. It was initially built by wood, but because it was built by wood, it was prone to burning down. And in the year 404, it was burnt down. And this was due to infighting amongst the nobles under the Emperor Arcadius in the year 404. Emperor Theodosius II, then following Arcadius, rebuilt the Aya Sophia in the year 415. Now, he added some additions. So if you pan up to the top, you'll see the wooden structures. He added 5 naves, however, the roof was still made of wood. If you look across now, you'll see that there are some names. So if we look straight ahead, we see the name Umar radiallahu anhu. If you look to our right hand side, you'll see the name of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And here, of course, we can't see it because we're on the side, but you have the name of Allah, the name of God. In the corner, we have the name Ali radiallahu anhu. And then you have the 2 grandsons of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Hassan and Hussein. Now, of course, these were not there at the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam or at the time of the Ottomans. This was added on a little bit later in approximately the 16th century. Now, if we continue walking through, due to the structure and the way it was built, Aya Sophia was prone to burning down. And this is one of the remaining pillars and you can see based off of how it is, that it's slightly wobbled, it's damaged, it's burnt. So they reconstructed how it was when it had been initially destroyed. The structure, the Aya Sophia, was built in the year 404, it burnt down. It was built in 415, it burnt down again. It was built in the year 532 under Justinian or Justinius, and then it was rebuilt again in 537, and that is the current structure that we have currently as you see it today. Now, if you pan across, you'll see that there's an upper gallery and there's a lower gallery. So the upper gallery, where we currently are, is essentially where the rich, the upper class, the elite would stay. Now, if we look down below, so this is the upper gallery where we are currently. So if you pan across to the other side, you have the upper gallery. This is where the rich people, the aristocrats, the ones that had wealth, nobility, they would stay. If you pan below to the ground, to the main prayer space, this is where the commoners would stay. And they were initially separated on wealth, gender, and class. The initial construction of the basilica did not have any murals. After it was rebuilt, emperors added it on as time went on. The Sultan Muhammad al-Fatih or Mehmed II added 4 minarets to the structure. If you currently look, Christian mosaics were covered using paint. Now, in 1935, when Ataturk converted this from a mosque into a museum, he removed all the coverings that the Ottomans had originally put. That's because coverings of paintings were not allowed in mosques. But Ataturk took them off, and now you can currently see that they are available to see. If you look up top on our right hand side, you'll see two angels. You see one on the left and one on the right. On the right hand side, you can see a white face in the middle of the angel. If you pan to the left one, you'll see that that has been scratched out. Now that was scratched out initially by the Ottomans. They added a cover of clay over the face. When Ataturk converted this into a museum, he had the clay removed from the right hand side, so the face, as it was in the Byzantine time, is currently visible today. Now during prayer times, they cover up a lot of these mosaics, and if we come across one, we can show you. The current calligraphy as we see it today, so the names of the Prophet of God and of the four caliphs and his grandsons were designed by Mustafa Izzet, and this was approximately done in the 16th century. The Aya Sophia went through more additions in 1847 and 1849, with Swiss architecture added under the rule of Sultan Abdul Majid.
They only take this side and that side. One of the left. Cross. They respect. It's very old. It became more.
Yes. Actually, the current building, Aya Sophia, already 1500 years old. The building, built as a Christian Orthodox church in 532 by Emperor Justinianus. But actually, the building here, it is the third Christian Orthodox church built in same location. That means the first Christian Orthodox church initially built during the reign of Constantine the Great in 337, which is took 24 years to build. 361 during the time of Constantine I, open for people to pray in as a Christian Orthodox church. But the church which was ordered built by Constantine, and it was called Megala Iglesia, which means big church, great church. It was not called Aya Sophia. Actually, it was built basilical, which means colonnaded. Each 5 meters they put a columns, small arches and small wall, and it was built with flat and wooden roof, not with dome. The first church, which was ordered built by Constantine the Great, destroyed by the people, public, against the Emperor Arcadius in the riot. In 404, the first church destroyed because Patriarch Johannes Chrysostomos, who was the religious leader of the Christian Orthodox people in the city, got disagreement with Empress Eudokia, the wife of Arcadius. Because of that, Arcadius exiled him to the east of Turkey. But public, they loved their patriarch, that's why they made an uprising against Arcadius. In that riot, first church burned and down. Arcadius lost his crown. His son, Theodosius II, became next emperor. And he ordered to build second church in the same place. Took 11 years to build. 415 open for people to pray. And it was called Aya Sophia, which means divine wisdom, holy wisdom. And it was also built basilical, colonnaded, with a wooden roof. Actually, the second church, which was ordered to be built by Theodosius II, destroyed again in 532, that time against the Emperor Justinianus. Because of the huge tax, and people, they were not happy with Emperor Justinianus because they were not from the royal family. They got a revolt, but the revolt called Nike, which means victory. It was the biggest riot during the Eastern Roman Empire period, which took 1 week. But in 1 week, whole city was under fire. Imperial church, Aya Sophia, Aya Irene burned and down. All imperial buildings were destroyed. But end of the week, the rebels, they thought they won the revolt. They chose a new emperor to celebrate in the Hippodrome, which was the ride of the Blue Mosque. They collected. If you imagine the capacity of the Hippodrome, it was 40,000 seats. But in that celebration, the imperial soldiers entered the Colosseum, locked the gate, slaughtered 35,000 people, killed from imperial soldiers. The revolt is finished, but city all destroyed. Justinianus, he ordered to rebuild the city. That's why today when you go Aya Irene Church, dated 532. Aya Sophia 532. Almost all Roman heritage buildings, Eastern Roman or Byzantine empires, buildings remain from 532 because whole city rebuilt by Emperor Justinianus. Actually, it took only 5.5 years to build second church, which is this current building, took only 5.5 years. The first church, 24 years, second, 11, third, even they tried different technique. First time in history, they built a church with dome. They tried first technique, but they built in a 5.5 years because of that. If you look at the corner, you see there are two brown pillars at the corner. They are two and brown. Those brown pillars, each corner has 8 from Egypt. If you look at behind, there are white square pillars. They are also 2. Each corner has 8 white pillars from Baalbek temple in Lebanon. The pillars right side, upper gallery, this side, even they are all from west of Turkey, from Pergamon. Because 200 years before to build building, people became Christian by Constantine the Great. That means no more need for old Greek or pagan temples. They collect the architectural stuff, pillars, from old ancient temples from all around Eastern Roman Empire, shipped to Constantinople to rebuild Aya Sophia or to build new building in short time. That's why it took only 5.5 years to build. Actually, guys, 2 architects from Anatolia, Isidoros was a mathematician, Anthemius was a physician. 10,000 slaves worked and finished in 537. But till 1453, it was a Christian Orthodox church. But Sultan Mehmed II, he conquered Constantinople in 1453. And he converted Aya Sophia, a mosque for Muslim people to pray in. Till 1935, Aya Sophia, it was a mosque. But 1935, by the order of Atatürk, who was the founder of Republic of Turkey, he converted to the museum. But actually, figure, frescoes, icons, wall paint forbidden in the mosque. That's why when it's converted to the mosque, all the mosaics plastered. Turks, they haven't destroyed, they just plastered. 1935, when they took out the plastered, all the mosaics come alive. That we get chance to today to see the Christian Orthodox mosaic panels, wall paint and frescoes and icons in the church because of that. Actually, till pandemic, it was a museum, but during the pandemic 3 years ago, convert to the mosque again. Just 1.5 month ago, this site where the upper gallery opened as a museum, that you get chance to see museum, to see the Christian Orthodox mosaic panels. If you look at the down, you can see the Christian and Islamic stuff together. Look, you see the windows where the stained glasses, that's the niche of the church. Christian Orthodox or Catholic Church, direction to Jerusalem. But Muslim, when we pray, we have to face to Kaaba, which is in Mecca, 12 degrees to the right side. If you look at the marble niche, which is underneath of the window, you see over there, it's not in the middle, little bit to the right side, 12 degrees. Even if you look at all Islamic stuff, they are 12 degrees to the right side, which is this way to Mecca. Actually, Ayasofia, when it was built as a Christian Orthodox church, but it was an imperial church. That means all the Eastern Roman Emperor coronation ceremony, they used to make in Ayasofia. If you look at down, you see the circle marbles down, uncovered section. You see, it's open, there are circle marbles, called ampholion, means where the Eastern Roman Emperor get crowned. All the coronation ceremony they used to make in Ayasofia. When it became to mosque, it became also imperial mosque. Because of that, the Ottoman architects, they haven't tried to build higher dome and bigger dome than Ayasofia in Constantinople as a respect, because it was imperial mosque. But Edirne, which was the former capital city of Ottoman Empire before Constantinople, architect Sinan, 16th century, end of the 16th century, he built a mosque called Selimiye because of the Sultan name was Sultan Selim II. That Selimiye mosque, little higher, little bigger dome than Ayasofia. But in Istanbul or Constantinople, during the Ottoman Empire, they haven't tried to build or higher than Ayasofia. As a size, if you imagine, from ground level top, 56 meters high. The dome almost 32 diameter, but it's not circle, it's ellipse. Because 20 years, when it's built 20 years later, the dome collapsed. They had to rebuild again. Actually, if you look at, you can see this small section, which is like second floor at the left side. That was for Sultan. Because Ayasofia, it was imperial mosque. Friday pray, noon pray. Sultan used to enter from palace, where we entered to the 20 meters left side, to Ayasofia to walk his lodge to pray in this section because of security. Sultan used to pray separate from public in that section over there. Actually, if you look at the wall, you can see the script of Allah, Prophet, Allah is God. Left, Prophet Muhammad, his messenger. 4 religious leaders as a caliphs after Prophet Muhammad, important for Muslim. Left, Abu Bakr, Omar, Osman, Ali. 2 grandsons of Prophet Muhammad, this side Hassan and Hussein. Every Turkish or Ottoman mosque has same 8 name, same place, but usually small. You see between windows, they are same script. You see usually that size or little bit bigger, not this size. These are biggest in Islamic world. Actually, the Izzeddin Efendi, who made those 16th century, okay, he made inside because those script bigger than Imperial Gate down. The Imperial Gate, which is 7.5 meters high, but this script are 8 meters. They are bigger than gate because he made inside in Aya Sophia. If you look at under the dome, you can see the angels at the pendentif where the triangular part, you can see the angels called seraphim. They are 4, 2 other side, 2 this side. But if you look at the faces open, that one, but when it's converted to the mosque, they put bronze placa to the face, painted yellow like a star. If you look at in the middle of the angel, you can see that one over there. Look, it's yellow. It's like a little bit dark, but yellow. Actually, 2010, city Istanbul became cultural city of Europe. 2010, one of the angel face restored and opened, show people how it was. And you can see 500 years almost, it was closed. They just opened 14 years ago. And we can walk other side to see a little bit more and explain to you. Actually, the region Marmara, where we are in today, got name from marble, Marmara, because we have huge marble mines in this region, west of Turkey. That's why all Roman buildings or Ottoman mosques or palaces decorate with marbles. All they are original, over than 1,000 years old. Actually, guys, you see the circle marble here, where the balcony, it was for empress. Empress used to stand over there, watch the coronation or prayer ceremonies in Aya Sophia. Actually, Aya Sophia, it was also center of the Christian Orthodox. If we imagine the patriarchy, the leader of the religious Orthodox, patriarchy, it was over there. You see the gate which is marble, called Gate of Hell and Heaven. Behind that gate, it was the patriarchy, where the religious matters discussing with patriarch, emperor, and synod. No problem. Actually, right now we are in the Christian Orthodox Patriarchy, the center of the religious Orthodox. All the religious matters were discussing here. If you look at here, there used to crosses behind the gate, but when it's converted to the mosque, they took out the crosses because figure and crosses forbidden in the mosque, that's why. We can go through here. I am going to show you something really interesting and different. Actually, guys, 9th to 13th century, almost 400 years, there used the Viking fighters here. The Viking, East European, Scandinavian, 9th century, they came here, become a guard for the emperor. If you imagine, they were really tall, 2 meters. They used to fight with the long axes, but they were very good to fight with the sword and the arrows as well. But when the battle became bad for the Roman, with their long axes, they used to open a way to get the emperor from out of the war. 400 years, they just fight for the Eastern Roman emperors. One of them was here, let's say probably 800 or 900 years ago. With his knife, he carved to the marble that he was here with his language. His name was Halwan. If you get here, you can see here in his language that he wrote, he was here in probably 800 or 900 years ago. His name was Halwan. You can see here, Haldan, that he wrote, he was here. Actually, if you look at right down to the corner, you are going to see big marble jar. Have you seen? You see the big marble jar on the corner? Yes, they are twins. That means there is another one at the corner left side. Those 2 marble jars, over than 2,000 years old, 1st century BC. But they were in the pagan temple west of Turkey, becoming the garden of the monastery. But end of the 16th century, Sultan Mehmed III, who was the 12th Ottoman king or sultan, he ordered the broth and put in Aya Sophia. You know, when the Ramadan came, fasting period, they used to put inside sherbet, juice to drink, and normal time they used to put inside water to drink. Usually they used to serve sherbet or water exit of the mosques, but in Ayasofia they were serving in this big marble jar, and they are over than 2,000 years old. If you look at under the windows, you are going to see 3 figures, mosaics. Those are the former patriarchs of Constantinople, and their figure mosaics over there. Actually, we are going to see 2 royal family mosaic panel on the left. And it's gotta be interesting to you because you are going to see first Photoshop in history more than 900 or 800 years ago. First Photoshop. Kolay gelsin. Actually, guys, to make a mosaics, they use gold, silver, colored stone, gems, and terracotta. If you look at this one from 12th century, let's say from 1130, 1140s around. The first one, Johannes Komnenos II, Mother Mary Jesus Christ, next to Mother Mary, Empress Irene, on the corner their son Alexius Komnenos, or next emperor, his son. We call them Komnenos royal family. That's from 12th century. The money bag and the paper on their hand represent their donation to the church. They made very big donation to the Aya Sophia, even they were enough strong to order to make their mosaic panel in Aya Sophia. The other one from 11th century, let's say 100 or 90 years before than that. Actually, if you look at this one, Empress Zoe, Constantine the Ninth or Constantine Monomachus, Pantocrator Jesus Christ. Actually, Empress Zoe's father, his name was Constantine the Eighth, has no son, two daughters. Zoe, 46 years old, she was single, and Theodora, her daughter, she was 44 years old, single. She got married and her husband became next emperor, who was the Grand Duke of City Constantinople. But 25 or 30 years her reign during, she got 3 times married, one adopted son, 4 emperor on her period. If you look at the mosaic panel, if you look at the neck restored, because when she changed the husband, instead of to make whole mosaic, they took out from the neck, made the new face of the new husband. The body is the first husband of the Zoe, who was the Grand Duke of City Constantinople, but the head is the last husband of the Zoe, or third husband, called Constantine the Ninth or Constantine Monomachus. That means, let's say 900, 950 years ago, first Photoshop in history. But the most interesting mosaic panel we are going to see here. If you look at underneath of the ceiling, the mosaic panel, which is covered by curtain, because that's also prayer area. Figure is forbidden in the mosque, that's why they put curtain to cover. Actually, Mother Mary and Jesus Christ. That side where the curtain behind, there is the Archangel Michael. This side, Archangel Gabriel. The Michael, by the time period, the painting, wall paint is lost, but it's still the Gabriel mosaic, some parts still stay. Actually, that's a composition. Archangel Michael, Archangel Gabriel, Mother Mary, Jesus Christ protect the royal families. But that's important for us because that's from 842. First mosaic panel after iconoclastic period. That means 726 people, 716 people, they start to pray to the icons, mosaic panels, frescoes. Because of that, emperor destroyed them all. In the Christian Orthodox Church, 26 years, no figures, no mosaic panel, no icons like mosque or synagogue. But 842, they start to make again. That was the first after that period. If you go all around in Turkey to Egypt even, in the Christian Orthodox Church, you are going to see mosaic panels after this one, not before that. 1 or 2 church which were secret church in Cappadocia, you can see the wall paint before than that. But normally, Christian Orthodox Church, you are going to see mosaic panel after that one, not before. Actually, if you look at other side, you see the pillar is a little bit lie. Sorry. First time they tried to build building with a dome. To get more space in the middle, they put no columns. But if you look at this pillar, it's a little bit lie down, you see? Because they made many mistakes in Aya Sophia. High pressure of the domes make the pillars a little bit light. Actually, 1204, 1261, almost 57 years, city Constantinople, it was called Latin Empire. And Ayasofia became Catholic Church. 57 years converted to Catholic Church. Because last Crusaders, Italian, Venetian, they came here to Byzantium or Constantinople, moved to East, fight with Turks or Arab Muslims. But when they were here, they have seen very rich country, then they took the city, become a Latin Empire. Actually, but 1261, this Constantinople taken back by the Eastern Roman Empire again, emperor again, became Christian Orthodox and Eastern Roman Empire again. But 57 years, Constantinople, it was Latin Empire. One of the chief commander of the Latin Venetian, when he came here, he was over than 90 years old. And he passed away and he wanted to be buried in Aya Sophia. That's the grave of Heracus Dandolo. You see the grave here, that was the grave of Heracus Dandulu, who buried here in Aya Sophia. But 1453, Aya Sophia, when it's converted to the mosque, Sultan Mehmed ordered to take out his skeleton and his armor. He gifted as a gift to the Bellini. Bellini, Italian artist, came here to make the paintings of the Sultan Mehmed. He gave them as a gift and he took to the Italy today. But almost 200 years, Heracus Dandulu buried here, who gave very big damage to Constantinople, Aya Sophia as well. Only mosaic panel from Latin period, from 13th century, you are going to see this is mosaics over there. You see in the middle, Pantocrator Jesus Christ, left of the Jesus Christ, John the Baptist or Johannes the Baptist, we call Prophet Yahya, left Mother Mary. Both of them prayed to Jesus Christ to forgive the people. That's the original looking of the mosaic panel. Actually, to the gate left, take us to the exit. If you like, you can stay more, but you can come here. Actually, brother, when you go down, okay, after my tour, you are going to stay here. When you at the exit, to the right side, there is a gate to enter to the mosque. When you enter, you are going to see one mosaic panel over than 1,000 years old. You are going to see in the mosaic panel, I do explain to you here. Look, this is, you are going to see down. When you exit from Ayasofia, there is way to the right to the enter from the gate, which is called Beautiful Gate, over than 2,000 years old. But you are going to see on the door this mosaic panel. Look, Mother Mary, Jesus Christ. This one here, who is holding castle, Constantine the Great. The castle represents the Constantinople because the old city surrounded by high walls, which seems like castle. Left Emperor Justinianus, who ordered to rebuild Aya Sophia, this building, current building, in 6th century, holding Aya Sophia. If you take out the minarets from building today, original looking, it was like this. Both of them give to city Constantinople, Aya Sophia, to the Jesus Christ to show their respect. And this is from 10th century, that means over than 1,000 years old mosaic panel.
One thing I had, so inside the main hall, it has the names of the Allah, the prophets.
Exactly, 4 caliphs and grandson of Prophet Muhammad, Hassan and
When were
Hussein.
they put in?
These are from 16th century.
Okay.
The original, which when it's converted to the mosque, when they put the script, they were rectangular like this. But Izzeddin Efendi, 16th century, made those script inside of Aya Sophia. Okay. Those are biggest in Islamic world, but anyway, those are bigger than Imperial Gate. Because 1935, Aya Sophia, when it was mosque, they converted to the museum. They tried to take them out, but they couldn't because they are bigger than Imperial Gate.
Okay. What are some things that when people come here, they ignore or not see, but they should see?
Of course. Sorry?
So what are some things that people, when they come here, they don't see, but they should see?
Actually, some mosaic panel down, but you could not see because it's open for pray only people, and they put some curtain on the cover. But here, actually, it has built as a Christian Orthodox church, but even you haven't seen the mosaic panel down, which is dolphins and trident, which was not Christian, which was not Muslim, but that was a pagan, right? Because Aya Sophia, when it's built, they put pagan symbol, like this one here. This is just at the first floor behind one of the huge pillars. Look, dolphins and trident upside down. Opposite side there is another panel like this, which is represent Poseidon, right? That's pagan. But actually when it's built, it has built as a Christian Orthodox church, right? But they put Poseidon trident because protect the building against the earthquake. If you imagine Greek or Roman belief, Poseidon or Neptune, he was not only god of sea, he was also god of horses and earthquake as well. Protect Aya Sophia against the earthquake, they put Poseidon trident, but they were Christian Orthodox.
That's it. So this design.
Actually, these are all restored, but the original looking, you see the arches,
Yeah.
the mosaics, it was all made out mosaics, and if you imagine 67 tons of gold, they used to make mosaics, all underneath of ceilings made out mosaics. Yellow, when you are going to see, which is brilliant, pure gold.
The relentless siege of Constantinople by the Ottoman Turks culminated in a dramatic fall on May 29, 1453. The once mighty Theodosian Walls, battered by modern cannons, finally succumbed, allowing a surge of Ottoman soldiers into the city. The valiant defense by the Byzantines, though fierce, was ultimately overwhelmed. Sultan Mehmed II, the conqueror, entered a devastated Constantinople, his sights set on a symbolic victory. His ultimate goal wasn't just conquest, but transformation. The Aya Sophia, a cornerstone of Christianity, would be converted into a mosque, marking a pivotal shift in the religious landscape of the region. The fall of Constantinople on May 29, 1453, not only ended the Byzantine Empire, but also ushered in a new era of Ottoman dominance and a significant change in the power dynamics of the Eastern world.
This concludes the Sultan's journey from Rumeli Hisar through the Galata Tower, through the Theodosian Walls, and to the Aya Sophia. This was a Tarikhology documentary. We hope you enjoyed it. See you in the next one.
As the sun sets over the storied cityscape of Constantinople, we reflect on the journey we've shared through the canals of time, tracing the vibrant tapestry of its history. From the rise of empires to the echoes of conquests, from the whispers of Byzantine intrigue to the resounding call of minarets, Constantinople has stood as a beacon of culture, resilience, and change. To our cherished viewers, we extend our deepest gratitude for embarking on this voyage with us, for delving into the depths of this majestic city's past and present. As we bid farewell to this chapter, we eagerly anticipate the dawn of new horizons. We hope that our humble endeavor has stirred within you a hunger for knowledge, a thirst for discovery, and a renewed appreciation for history. Until we meet again, may the spirit of Constantinople linger in your hearts. Thank you
Can alınır, can verilir Hakka düşman olunca. Allahu Ekber nidası düşer dilinden, Araf'ın yüreğinde yankı bulur. Budur kıyamın arası, gözlerinde korku yoktur.